I'll tell you right now, I don't remember the last time I had this much fun filming with a lens. This is the new Sirui anamorphic 1.33 times lens. We're gonna get to what that means in just a moment. But for those of you who are new to anamorphic lenses, they're basically oval-like lenses that produce these cool sci-fi lens flares. And you can see right here what happens when we point this lens in an area of very strong light. Also, you will notice what kind of bokeh this lens produces. And because this lens is oval-like, we are gonna get oval bokeh balls in the background. That's kind of funny, bokeh balls. Now, what's so special about the Sirui anamorphic lens? Well, for one, its size. It's actually the same size and height as my 16-35 Zeiss f4 lens, but it's skinnier and it's much heavier, being at 1.2 pounds. So this is actually a very interesting lens when it comes to size and weight. And actually what's packed inside is very impressive. We are talking about 11 different elements of glass that come in 8 different groups. We have a 10-bladed aperture here. Of course, it's manual, but it's very smooth to the touch. As you can see here, as I move the aperture ring, you can see how smooth the blades close and open back up. The focus ring is actually very similar. It has this nice, sturdy, smooth feel, and you can actually look at the elements of glass moving as I'm moving the focus ring. Compared to other lenses that are built for our cameras, this has no contact points. So it's a 100% manual lens. There's no autofocus and no electronic control over your f-stop. You have to do all of that manually. Now, is that a bad thing? No, this is actually a very good thing. I actually advise people to use manual lenses a lot more than automatic lenses because we need to get used to controlling focus and aperture, and we are able to control the lens and camera a lot better that way too. Sometimes autofocus just doesn't focus on the right objects for us, so it's important to understand how a lens works without relying on our camera bodies to control all of that. Now, being a 50mm lens, we don't get that wide field of view like on wider lenses like my 16, but we do get a mid-range focal length. So a 50mm won't be the best for gimbal shots, but you can definitely still use it on a gimbal if you want to get those tighter dynamic shots. I used it on my Weebill S pretty easily here. And by the way, if you're not following me on Instagram, I showed this lens on my Instagram a lot using the Juin Weebill S. So check me out at momentum_productions and you will see all of that happening. With this lens, we get a 67mm thread size, allowing you to attach filters. And here I'm using the Polar Pro Peter McKinnon edition filter, and it fits perfectly right on the lens. And if you want to get that shallow depth of field out in bright sunny days, then an ND filter is an absolute must. Let's talk about picture quality. Now, this is mainly going to be a lens that I'm going to be using for video because I take a lot better videos than I take photos, let's be honest. And it's a really fun lens to use. You can see some of the footage that I took here out in Santa Monica and Woodland Hills. And I just loved using this lens at night specifically because that's when I got those really beautiful bokeh shots with that shallow depth of field. And you can see that oval-like bokeh, and I just absolutely love that look. This is a specialized lens, guys. So this is not a lens that you would first pick up right when you get your camera. You need to get your basic lenses first. This is a lens for specific taste of people who want different types of looks for their videos. Eventually, I do recommend that everybody gets an anamorphic lens because it's just such a popular type of look, and you can do so much with this type of look too. When it comes down to the build quality, it's great. Like I said, it's heavier than my 16-35 Zeiss f4, even though it's actually slimmer. So I know that the glass elements are quite thick on the inside, and the lens, just like my Zeiss lenses, has an aluminum frame. As you can see here, Sirui did not take any shortcuts when it came to build quality. This lens is built for APS-C cameras, so crop sensor cameras, this is the perfect fit for you, but I don't own any crop censored cameras, so I took my Sony A9, my Sony A7S, and thankfully Sony full frame cameras have an APS-C function, so as you can see here, if I just plug in my lens onto my camera body, you can see major vignetting. So you definitely have to turn on the APS-C feature inside the Sony menu, and your camera will automatically adjust to get rid of all that dreaded vignetting. Now this lens is 1.33x, meaning that you are going to get a stretched horizontal view, and this is going to give us a 2:3:9:1 aspect ratio, which is a widely used theatrical look that we see in cinema. So remember, when you're importing your anamorphic footage into your video editor, you have to apply the proper settings in order to make sure that your footage isn't squeezed. So this is basically called de-squeezing your anamorphic footage, because everything just looks really squeezed and distorted if we leave the footage untouched. You definitely have to de-squeeze it in post-production. So overall, this is a great lens. My only little thing with it is the focus distance. It's a 2.8 foot focus distance, which means that you can't really get too close to this lens. And there's one other thing. I really want Sirui to make a kit of anamorphic lenses. A 50mm is a great start, but I would love to see a wide angle lens and a more narrow anamorphic lens too. So hopefully they come up with something like that, because I think a kit of 3 anamorphic lenses would be awesome. Sirui has an ongoing Indiegogo campaign for this lens, so make sure you support them. Alright guys, that's it for me. I'll see you in the next video.